How would you feel if I told you that your DNA matches DNA that we found on Mindy's body?
I'd be like, that wasn't true, so I know I wasn't there, so.
At approximately 1 a.m. on September 13th, 2006, Mindy Morgenstern was found dead in her apartment by her friend, Tony. From the exact moment the police arrived at the scene, a manhunt began. But little did they know, they would actually be hunting one of their own. Mindy Morgenstern was a senior attending the Valley City State University in North Dakota and came from a farming family that resided almost 200 miles to the west in Little Blue Salem. She lived off campus in an apartment building close to her university, a complex home to many officers of the Valley, which guaranteed her safety as she lived alone. She was described as a happy soul, generous with advice, and always willing to stand by her friends, the traits everyone needs in a friend. She was considered the more responsible one among her friends, one of whom was Tony Bauman, who was in a fix and needed Mindy. On the night of September 13, 2006, Tony was out with another friend named Danielle, and the problem was that her boyfriend didn't like her hanging out with other girlfriends.
We ended up going out.
Had a couple drinks there.
Had some drinks.
And as he started calling her, Tony came up with a cover story.
I said, we're with Mindy. We're just, hanging out.
Unlike her other girlfriends, Mindy was the safe and trustable friend. But Tony's boyfriend felt that something was up, so he asked to speak to Mindy, who wasn't there. The two had no choice but to get Mindy from her apartment to keep their cover story intact.
I said, Danielle, let's hustle up and get to Mindy's faster so we can drag her out so she can be in the background.
So she's your alibi.
She was my alibi.
As they were going to her apartment, they tried to call her and get her ready, but she wasn't picking up.
Hey, it's Mindy, and I'm not here right now. Hey, Mindy, I'm calling. Hey, Jamie's trying to get over to you. My call.
When they reached her apartment at around 1 a.m., Danielle stayed in the car while Tony went to her apartment, only to find that something sinister had happened.
For some reason I knocked, and then I just grabbed the door handle and it just pushed open. I took about 2-3 steps in, and that's when I noticed something on the floor. And then I looked down and I noticed it was Mindy. And I saw her eyes, and that's when I knew that something bad had happened.
Tony rushed back out, screaming for help, as she had never witnessed or been in such a difficult position. She was able to catch the attention of one of the neighbors, Robert Linz.
Could you come with me and check on my friend? I took like 2-3 steps in maybe. Just enough that I could see all of her. I backpedaled as fast as I could. I remember I backpedaled to hit the hallway wall. I think he checked for a pulse, and he just said it. I'm sorry, friend. I'm sorry, but your friend is gone. And I just noticed that, her throat, and it was obvious.
One important detail to note here is that Tony claims that it was quote-unquote obvious that her throat was cut. Yet, Robert checked for a pulse and informed her that she was dead. Why did he check for a pulse when it was obvious her throat had been cut? After the 911 call, Sergeant Dave Swenson responded to the scene and recognized Mindy instantly, as Valley City was a small community and she was a very popular face. In fact, she was so popular that in 30 minutes, her apartment complex was surrounded by over 100 people, some of whom even recognized that it was Mindy's apartment where the trouble had happened. One of the neighbors, Chrissy Gibbs, was in the apartment complex and noticed the police lights outside her window. And when she saw that somebody had died,
I went into sheer panic. My husband, he kind of just wrapped me up in his arms, and we laid there. I didn't sleep a wink.
Upon entering the apartment, the sergeant was hit by the smell of Pine Sol, a clear sign the place was recently cleaned. The possibility of the crime scene being a burglary was immediately ruled out, as everything appeared untouched, and her belongings were found scattered as if she dropped them in a hurry. The autopsy concluded that Mindy was strangled with deep neck cuts causing death by asphyxiation. Defensive marks under her fingernails suggested that she fought back, pointing to the killer through DNA. Though an exact match wasn't found, an indirect one later broke the case wide open. The investigation focused on Mindy's inner circle, suspecting a personal motive. And among many connections, her ex-boyfriend Kyle Kuznia stood out. Their relationship, spanning over 2 years, ended in 2005 due to distance. And despite moving on, Kyle recalled in the interrogation Mindy's attempt to reconnect 7 months before her murder, a gesture he rebuffed, leading to regret. Kyle was cooperative and cleared via DNA, but he wasn't the last of Mindy's attempts to stay connected to her past. Rodney, Kyle's father, and another suspect, kept in frequent contact with Mindy, blurring boundaries to a concerning degree, according to friends and family. Despite claiming a fatherly bond, Rodney's actions, particularly his unnerving voicemail following Mindy's death, cast a shadow over his intentions.
This is Rod. I know what happened to you. Oh, there's your voice. Can't take it. I love you, kid. Oh, God, I miss you.
His DNA was also collected, and he was free to leave. The last 2 suspects under suspicion were the neighbor, Robert Linz, the guy who checked a throat-cut person's pulse, and of course the boyfriend, Jordan Ranum. Normally, the evidence should exonerate him, but out of all the suspects on the list, he was the one who made it to trial. And here's why. On paper, he was a picture-perfect boyfriend, chauffeuring Mindy to places, spending time with the family, very supporting, very loving. But it was later alleged that the couple's romance was cordial. It leads us to wonder whether an imbalance in the relationship can be a cause for murder or not. But either way, all the neighbors present in the apartment building underwent DNA sampling, and so did the suspects. And here's what we found. Number 1, the ex-boyfriend, Kyle, was at work at the time, and his DNA didn't match the DNA under the fingernails, so we can cross him off. Then, number 2, there's his father, Rodney, who was at a family dinner about 200 miles away from the apartment complex. His DNA was also not a match, so he's off the list. Number 3, Jordan was at the family farm working, and his DNA was also not a match, so he's off the list. And then lastly, number 4, the neighbor, Robert Linz, was at work during the time of the murder and showed up for the call to help at the last possible minute. His DNA didn't match the DNA on the fingernails either, so he was crossed off the list. And with that, the investigation came to a complete halt. All the suspects had strong and verifiable alibis, and the DNA did not match any of them. However, it did match a cold case of 2004 in Fargo, in which the victim was sexually assaulted. Being the only possible lead, the investigators contacted the victim to get as much information as possible, all the while knowing that the information would be very graphic.
On my stomach. He was on top of me. He had his arm in my mouth, so I couldn't scream. I just remember fighting him, struggling him. He was twice my size. It's terrifying. I thought that was the end of it.
She described her attacker as 3 things: African-American male, over 6 feet tall, and over 200 pounds. So there was a solid match using the victim's description and DNA from this case, and combined with the DNA sampling and testing in the entire apartment complex. Remember the neighbor, Chrissy Gibbs? The one who went into sheer panic and left for her parents' house? It was her husband, Mo Maurice Gibbs. He ticked all the boxes from the victim's description, and his DNA was a match. This man served as a correctional officer for Barnes County Jail and was a neighbor of the dearly departed. But with 0 ties to the person, we're all wondering why he did what he did. Well, as we dive into his background, all the pieces of the puzzle will start to make sense. The investigators caught up to him, and instead of scaring him into hiding, they told him to come down to the station to give some information. And just to make sure that the information he's providing doesn't have any loose ends, they'll do so with a polygraph.
You know, as I said, what we have to do is start eliminating people. There are just so many people involved here. You know, names have come up, and you being law enforcement and everything, we said, well, we'll start with Mo. He'll set the example for everybody. Do you have any problem with taking a polygraph or anything?
No, I don't.
Okay. I appreciate that because it's going to help us a lot.
Not a problem.
Okay. You know, one of the other things too that we ask before we start this, and I ask this to everybody, not just because you're law enforcement, you don't have any weapons on you or anything like that, do you?
Sure. My phone and my keys.
Oh, okay.
No.
Nothing else on.
No.
Okay. Good enough. I appreciate you doing this, and like I said, you know, other people are gonna complain about us asking them to take it, but we can say, hey, we started with a law enforcement officer, and he didn't have any problem doing it. Good. Good. Have you ever taken a polygraph before?
Never.
Okay, let me explain to you what's gonna happen here.
I mean, to eliminate. I guess.
Right, and you understand the issue that we're dealing with.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and what's your understanding of the issue that we're dealing with?
What's my understanding?
Yeah.
I mean, somebody was murdered.
Yeah, okay. And that person was, you know, Mindy Morgenstern, right? Okay. And did you have anything to do with that?
No.
Okay. You know, I didn't think you probably would, you know, being in law enforcement and all that kind of thing. You know, from doing these type of investigations for several years, I've been doing polygraphs for several years. The person that would probably do something like this probably, you know, has hurt people in the past. And I know you've gotten in assaults and that, but you know, other than that, they probably have a history of hurting people or forcing women to have sex with them, or you know, hurting people they love or things like that. And you're not any of those people, are you?
No.
Yeah. You know, I know you know, you said you've had some problems in the past, but that was a long time ago.
Gibbs nods in agreement because he knows exactly what the detective is referring to. Gibbs had served in the Navy from 1990 to 1999, during which he was accused of attempted murder. He served 4 years in a military prison in that case. But that's just a small stain on his polished profile in law enforcement, because as the years went by, he made a big mess on his name.
When did you first move into that apartment?
I would say our 6 months lease just ended in October. The first October was in, so I would say, I want to say April, but I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
I believe it was April 1st we actually moved in.
Okay. Okay, prior to that, where were you living at?
We were living at
When did you know, I know you said you were living in Fargo for a while. Do you remember about when you moved here to Valley City?
It might have been February, I believe.
February of this year?
Of
05.
05.
Okay. And you were living in Fargo before that?
Yes.
Okay. You weren't married when you came here?
No.
Okay. Had you been married before you got married this time?
I was married before,
Oh,
but
really?
not like, I was already divorced. I got divorced in
Oh, okay.
97.
Okay,
But I mean-
and I didn't ask you earlier, but you had been married previous to this
Yes.
marriage here?
Yes.
Okay, and you got divorced when?
In 97.
Okay, so you moved into that apartment building in April. Did your wife live with you right away at that point?
Yes.
Your current wife moved in
Yes.
with you right away?
We were living together in the house before that.
Okay, so how long have you lived together then?
Since I moved here in February.
All right. Did you know your wife prior to moving here?
Yeah. We were dating and I was living in Fargo.
Okay,
So it was, you know, we were trying to make things work, and it was like, you know, why don't you just move up here, and I
Sure.
can go to school here. So that's what made me move up here.
all right.
As you can tell, he's not just being interrogated for one case, but two. Here, he's confirmed his presence in Fargo, matching the timeline with the 2005 case. And soon enough, they'll talk about his move here and how he got close to Mindy.
Now you moved into the apartment over there. Did you know who Mindy was?
Yes, I knew her. She worked with my wife's sister.
Okay, your wife's sister is,
Yeah, but she's in Kent right now. She goes to school in Kent.
okay. So you met Mindy through,
Yes.
So did you know Mindy well enough that you were on a first name basis? You talked to each other all the time?
Well, no, we didn't talk to each other all the time. It was in passing. Like we would see each other pass and be like, hey, you know, how you doing?
Mm-hmm.
But it was no long conversations.
Oh,
Like
okay,
that.
okay. But did she know your name?
Yeah, I would believe so.
Okay.
Because she knows my wife,
Okay.
so you know they know the whole family.
Did you guys get together and visit at all?
Like just to go out and hang out.
Well, even in the apartment building.
No, we never hung out. I mean, I went to her place one time, and that was probably either a week and a half or 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And that was just because she was coming home and she was holding her pants, holding a laundry basket and her book bag. And
Oh,
I helped,
okay.
you know, me and were leaving, so I
Okay.
helped her up to her apartment.
Okay.
And that was it.
Okay.
But other than that,
So that's the only time you've ever been up in her
That's-
apartment was
yes.
about a week and a half.
yes. No, we never hung out. I mean, I went to her place one time, and that was probably either a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. And that was just because she was coming home and she was holding her pants, holding a laundry basket and her book bag. And
Oh,
I helped,
okay.
you know, me and were leaving, so I
Okay.
helped her up to her apartment. And
Okay.
that was it.
Okay.
But other than that,
So that's the only time you've ever been up in her
That's-
apartment was
yes.
about a week and a half.
yes.
He just described the crime scene perfectly, naming two important elements: the laundry bag, which was untouched, and the book bag. Perhaps this was his way of getting access to her apartment. But why? That is still yet to be decided.
What, and I know you've given a couple statements as far as what you recall happening on that day where you were at. Can you just run through that again?
Well, and this, I've been talking with my wife because I might have my days mixed up on which, but I know now that me and her talked about it, I left the apartment at 11:30 with her because she has to be at work at 12:30 that day. And we went to lunch. So then I dropped her off at work at around 12:35, and I came back to the apartment. And I got to the apartment between 12:45 and 1 o'clock.
Where'd you guys go to lunch at?
I'm gonna guess and say, but
Okay.
we do so many things. It's
Sure.
just hard to remember.
Well, yeah, that's a week down the road here. I know I have a lot of problems remembering what I did this morning.
Yeah. So, but if I had to pick, I would say, but
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure if that's where we went. But we go somewhere almost every day.
Uh-huh.
But I remember, dropping her off and then coming back.
Okay, you dropped her off at work?
Yes, at work.
And where's that at? And then you went back to the apartment building?
Yes.
Okay, so what time do you think you got back to the apartment building?
I said between 12:45 and 1 o'clock.
After you dropped your wife off, were you alone?
I was with.
I was with you.
He admits to being in her apartment just once, but with the description he's given, we have a feeling it was that one time in which he did the deed. Now that the detective has laid the groundwork enough, he confronts him with the biggest piece of the puzzle.
How would you feel if I told you that your DNA matches DNA that we found on Mindy's body?
I'd be like, that wasn't true. So I know I wasn't there. So.
Okay. DNA is pretty specific.
Mm-hmm.
Down to millions of people.
Yeah, I understand that.
And somewhere along the line, Mindy scratched the person that attacked her. Do you have any fresh scratches on you or anything?
From Wednesday? No. From after Wednesday? Yeah.
Okay,
My
like
wife
where
can-
do you have scratches?
On my arm and right here. This happened Thursday. This happened Friday. And my
Okay.
wife can verify it because she.
What about any other scratches that you have on you anywhere?
No.
Nothing on your head or,
I shave. I mean,
yeah, like on your neck or your face or
No.
anything like that?
nothing.
Well, I'm serious about this now.
And I
And
understand. I understand.
We're in a bind here. Your DNA is matching what we found on her, under her fingernails.
I don't know how my DNA was under her fingernails.
Okay, you didn't have any contact with her that day at all?
No,
Or not for
no.
10 days, you said?
At least 10 days.
Yeah.
When I helped her upstairs.
Okay, your DNA is under her fingernails. You reacted to the belt on her neck. You haven't been completely honest
So
with me
what
about, you haven't
okay.
been completely honest with me about your background, because I probably know some things about you that you haven't told other people. You've been through this before, Mo. Not exactly like this, but
Mm.
you worked with the system enough where, the only thing that's really gonna help you out here is to cut your losses.
Well, I had nothing to do with her death. I know that.
Nothing at all.
Nothing.
Okay.
My background, okay, yeah. I can,
You didn't tell me the truth on all that.
as
did you?
far as my military past, no, I didn't.
Okay.
But I mean, and as you said, I didn't tell nobody that. Nobody really knows that.
Uh-huh.
But as my military past, that's, yeah, I'll admit to that, but
Okay.
I had nothing to do with her death, no.
Were you there when she was killed?
No, I was not.
No. The DNA, the polygraph here, I can maybe argue with. A lot of people don't agree with or believe in polygraph. The chief here doesn't believe in polygraph. And
This is
sometimes.
the first time I ever took one,
Okay,
so
yeah,
I
yeah,
have no clue
Yeah,
about it.
and there are times I wonder about the results too. But when we get DNA back, though, and it says, this is the person that it matches, this person out of so many million, we can't argue with that, Mo. Plus, I'm gonna let you in on something else here.
That's fine.
The DNA that they brought up, it also matches the DNA that was found on a girl that was assaulted 2 years ago in Fargo.
Okay. 2 years ago in Fargo?
Yep, in 2004. During the time period you were in Fargo.
Well, what is it? I know I didn't do it.
Mo, everybody says you're a good guy. The people that work with you, everybody around here loves you. Sometimes we just do stupid things. Whether we're drinking or doing dope or whatever, or we get caught up in something that we don't intend to do. And you had some problems in the past, I understand that, but you've also not been in trouble for a while.
Yeah, you're right.
You just got a new wife. She's pregnant. People make mistakes, Mo.
I didn't make this mistake, so.
Mo, I know you're gonna sit there and tell me that, but as I said, the polygraph, I can dismiss that. The DNA, I can't. I have to find, you tell me then, how did scrapings or your skin get under her fingernails? How could that have happened?
You tell me. I know nothing about DNA. I know I wasn't there.
The only way it could have gotten there, Mo, was through contact. And what I was getting with about Mindy, I know she's, we found out that she's probably gone out with quite a few guys. And I don't think anybody would blame you if you had tried taking her out or anything, or were having some type of relationship with her.
It didn't happen. I never tried to take her out, never.
Okay. Were you up in her apartment at all, other than the one time the 10 days ago?
No. I wasn't.
So there isn't gonna be, you know what trace evidence is? Trace evidence is little pieces of hair, little pieces of clothing particles, and things like that end up on a body. They transfer from one person to the other.
Yeah.
And are we gonna find any of trace evidence, trace particles from you on her body? We already got DNA.
You shouldn't know.
Um,
You want my clothes? They're probably still sitting in the dirty clothes hamper.
where
We
would they,
haven't
where,
worked.
where would they be at?
Right. Parents' house. We just moved them from the apartment to the thing in the hamper.
Okay, what were you wearing that day?
Blue shorts and a white tank top. So.
Mo, and I'm only doing this because you're a fellow law enforcement person, but you need to cut your losses here. You do whatever.
There is no losses to cut.
Yes, there are. Mo,
Okay.
I'm not lying to you here. You are in trouble here.
Okay, well, what's our next step? I mean, because you can talk to me till you turn blue in the face. I know I didn't do nothing. I can talk to you till I turn blue in the face. You're gonna go off of what you gotta do, and I'm gonna do what I gotta do.
Okay.
So I know I didn't do nothing. So now what do we do?
Well, I think there's gonna be somebody else that's gonna wanna talk to you.
And that's fine.
And,
So do I need to tell come pick up the kid, the truck? Or?
yeah, we'll take care of that in a little bit. What we're gonna do here, what I'm trying to do is give you a break. And you know, right now, or try and convince you that you need to do whatever you can to help yourself. But you've been through the system enough. You know how judges are. If somebody comes in and says, yeah, I screwed up, they take that into account. If somebody sits there and says, I didn't have anything to do with it, when there's overwhelming evidence against them, the judge does not take kindly to that. You're gonna have to decide which is best for you. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep. So
And again, that's as somebody that's in law enforcement. I can't make you help yourself.
I understand that.
You know, I guess what you're gonna have to think about is what you're gonna be leaving here. You got a wife and a kid on the way. And they're gonna go through a certain amount of embarrassment too. And I think you know that. You wanna talk to me about it at all?
There's nothing to talk about.
Okay, all right. Okay. If you change your mind, I'll be willing to talk to you again.
Okay.
All right?
So can I call her or?
Yeah, we'll get you a phone call here. Hang tight.
Cat's out of the bag, and he's straight up denying any involvement. During all this, his leg moves a lot, a clear indication of nervousness, but from the bottom up, he seems calm and composed, like a well-versed liar. The detective wouldn't have been grilling him this strongly if they hadn't checked the DNA twice. There was irrefutable evidence putting him on the scene, and he could have made any excuse about his DNA under her fingernails, but instead, his silence on the matter spoke volumes. Now another detective from the Fargo Police Department comes in to interrogate him because their sexual assault case just got busted wide open with the newfound DNA from Gibbs.
This is Detective Ledoux from the Fargo Police Department. He indicates he doesn't have anything to do with this or doesn't want to talk to us. I don't know if you want to talk to him about
Sure.
your issue.
Good Mo.
Yeah. Mo.
Detective Ledoux, Fire Police Department. I'm here to talk to you about when these guys took your DNA sample.
Mm-hmm.
I was working, and it was put in the national database. It's called CODOS. I suppose you're aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
What happened there was we got a hit on your DNA that matched the DNA of an assault that happened in Fargo, North Dakota in 2004. Okay, and we got you placed in this building at that time. What I need to talk to you about, because with my situation, I don't know if all the situation is going on here, but with Fargo, I mean, there's no question that you were responsible for what she alleges is an assault.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this happened at number 11 12th Street North in Fargo. Okay. I know your mom lives in Fargo?
My mom lives in Fargo on University.
Okay. Did you, You lived there for a while in Fargo?
In 2004, I had just got there, so
Okay.
I'm
And you
not
were,
exactly sure when you're talking about.
okay. It was in June of 2004. I know, it's a long time, it's hard to remember. But anyway, the DNA matches with the DNA that these guys took from you. And it's a national database, and then it kicks it out to me. My situation is, there's no question that you were involved in this, but I want to know because there's two sides to every story about what happened here. This was a gal, is probably, you're familiar with in Moorhead?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what I believe had happened is that you met her there and you took her to this and had sex, of course, with her. Now my question is to you, because the way I work is exactly, there's two sides to every story.
Mm-hmm.
Was this a consensual act? And she was like 21 years old, had short brown hair? Okay.
I mean, I want to say okay, you know, yeah, but I don't remember.
Okay.
You know, I don't want to say yeah to something that.
Did you have friends that lived, it's downtown building, and there's actually 3 buildings, but it's one apartment complex. When you walk in, there's a big common area. I think they got a pool outside, and then there's like an area, B building, a C building, and an A building. Okay, and it's downtown Fargo.
Okay.
All right.
I'll agree with you, I guess, because I really don't remember.
When you were in Fargo, did you ever have sex with somebody?
In Fargo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember when? This wasn't a girlfriend. This was just.
I mean, it might have happened a couple of times that I picked somebody up, and
Okay.
so.
I know it's hard to remember, but she was there. She left with you.
I mean, they probably all know me there. I was a regular. I mean, yeah, I left with
Okay.
several different people there.
Okay. Her name was.
If I don't remember the incident, I sure ain't gonna remember her name.
Okay. But it is possible. Well, it is.
Yeah, I mean, it could be possible.
It did happen because you can't get away with the DNA. I mean, that's.
I mean,
possible.
it's possible that, yeah, okay, I left with, I probably can name a couple that I've left with,
Okay.
you know, I mean,
At-
yeah, through, I mean, you know,
Okay.
it wasn't a uncommon thing for me to leave with somebody.
And where would you go? Did you bring them to your mom's to have the court?
Oh, never. I've never went to my mom's, but I mean, I might have went to her place, my place, or.
This was not her place. So I just want to take her to a friend's
I
house.
mean, it could be a friend's house. It could have been a party up there.
Do you know
Nah.
last name ring a bell at all? Can you go get my list? But that might jog your memory a little bit. It's one.
Right now, he has indirectly admitted to having sex with the victim, but the way she described the incident, there's no way it was consensual. It wasn't even at his place or her mother's place. It was at some unknown place where he lured her, which exposes his intentions even more.
Let me try to explain the room. She said that the room is just a mattress on the floor with no sheets on it, just a mattress cover.
I haven't been to no just a mattress cover. I mean, any place I've been, there was always a bed and.
Did you ever have a friend's house, like, hey, anytime you want to crash here, Mo, you can crash here, here's my keys. If you want
Well, no, it wasn't that I had a key. I mean, they might have been home, you know. And like I said, if it was after, if I went anywhere, it was because somebody was having a party, you know, hey, come over here.
I'm sorry about that. Okay. And you think you've left a couple times with girls and had sex?
Quite a few times.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
but I know I've never assaulted anybody.
So you're saying that this is very possible, but if it was,
Yeah,
it was
it's
consensual.
possible. I mean, and I can't deny that because, you know, that's how I was back then. It is very possible, but it was not an assault.
Right.
I know that because I don't need to assault anybody.
Okay. So it'd be very possible that we had your DNA from somebody who had sex with you in Fargo.
Yeah, it's possible.
Okay.
He's only digging his grave deeper by saying these things. And while he claims that this was quote-unquote how I was back then, further investigations revealed that this old habit didn't die. By the time these accusations came up, Gibbs was separated from his partner Chrissy and was already engaged to his new girlfriend, Amy Olson. And he's had a series of ex-girlfriends who testified later that their cause of breaking up with him was his infidelity. Tying all this together, we might be looking at a reason to kill. But before this polygraph test comes to an end, the detective tries to take one more jab at him, just to get him to confess.
What are we gonna do, Mo?
But I asked him, what's the next step? I don't know. You can portray me as this.
You know what? I'm not doing
I'm
anything.
not saying you personally.
Mhm.
I'm just generalizing. If they,
But they're-
I'll just say they.
They're gonna say.
They're gonna say whatever. I mean, I know
They're
I'm
gonna
not,
say you're vicious. That you're a cold-hearted bastard killer.
who just woke up one morning and said I'm gonna do this, right?
That's what they're gonna say. How can we explain it?
How can you explain I'm not?
You can't explain you're not, Mo. I'm sorry.
Am I a vicious person at work?
No.
Am I a vicious person at home?
But-
Am I a vicious person in the community?
That's what they're gonna say. Yes, you are.
Well,
Mo,
I'll just say bring two people to say I'm vicious. You
And
can't.
you know what they'd say? I wish we could bring Mindy Morgenstern right here to
And
say.
if she says I'm a vicious person, then and if she says I'm not a vicious person, then what?
I don't want to get into the did you do it or not, because I saw enough today to say, oh Jesus,
Okay, well, that's your opinion too.
it's more than an opinion, it's science.
Okay. Then,
But-
then we gotta go to the next step, like I told him.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
you can talk to your blue in the face, I can talk to someone blue in the face. It's not gonna make a difference. I know
But
I
can
can,
we,
it's no what, there's
You
no
know what?
other way. I don't know what to do. I don't know the next step, so.
well, this is going to get blown way out of proportion.
It is, it already is, for me to be sitting right here, it already is.
No,
blown
I
out of
can't.
proportion.
That part I wish I could say I believe you didn't do it, but I know based on what I've seen today.
Okay, well,
That's
that's your opinion.
And Mo, it's not my opinion. I wish it were my opinion, but it's not. It's not.
Well, I mean, we gotta do what we gotta do then. I mean,
How do you think it could have got there?
I have no clue. You know what? I don't know.
We got to come up with something, or they're gonna rake you over the coals, Mo.
Well, I mean,
Well, what did you get?
nothing I can.
Let's just take a step back for a moment, okay? Let's just kind of walk through. Did something happen between you two?
No, never.
Never?
No.
Mo, I think you gotta, you know it's not good. They come in here and they told us, Mr. Big, get out of our way. We're gonna take over.
Well, I mean, they're gonna
And
do what they want to do.
and I gotta tell you, they did a good job.
All right.
So what do you think we can do?
I don't know.
And with that, Mo Gibbs officially sealed his doom. He was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, and while he was awaiting trial, he got a handwritten letter from Mindy's mom, Eunice. She offered him a chance to gain some closure by telling the truth about what happened.
Mr. Gibbs, I forgive you publicly here. And I also want you to know that I won't forget what you did to Mindy.
In June of 2007, a year after the murder, Mo Gibbs was sentenced to 15 years in prison for the assault case in Fargo, and was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Mindy Morgenstern. And that's how justice was served to the family whose brave daughter's name will live forever in North Dakota's history. And if you ever find yourself in Valley City, be sure to visit the heart-shaped Mindy's Garden dedicated to the dearly departed, Mindy Morgenstern.